So guys, let me explain what is happening. I am back in Guyana. I've been back for the last, what, 12 years, I think I explained uh, to some of my friends on social media. I came back here in 2013, specifically to start some businesses. Arrived on October 1st, I think, October 1st, 2013. But the goal was in fact to um, spend some time at the University of Guyana teaching and establishing a community of um, academic expertise in the businesses that I wanted to build. So I spent about 4 years at the University of Guyana, but 3 years and 8 months specifically. So I spent 3 years and 8 months teaching after I came back. So from 2014, January 2014 to August 2017, I was actually a member of the faculty and I taught medical imaging. But the goal all along, right, the goal all along had been to spend the time building uh, the expertise in the area that I wanted to build companies so that I could have people to employ. Um, I actually achieved my objective to some extent. So um, I'm not going to criticize some of the problems I've had with working in academia. But as a result of spending that time and leaving the University of Guyana, I decided to start a, a group of companies based entirely on my area of expertise, which is medical imaging. So we're at the point now where I am about to launch these companies. So it's been about 7 years, 8 years in development, right? So 2017, 2025. That's how long it took to develop the technical base for this company. So a lot of people think that when you want to start a business, you just wake up one day and you start selling something to customers. It doesn't work that way, actually, especially if you want to start a high-tech business. And a lot of what I'm doing now benefits from the changes in technology, particularly AI, artificial intelligence, that has happened in the last last 2 years, and it's now trickling down to ordinary people. So what am I doing? I'm building a group of companies and a group of companies within a group of companies, and I'm at the point now what is called at the point where I'm doing a pre-seed round of capital um, raises. So I'm raising capital to launch the company, right? So pre-seed is when you are still building infrastructure, but you haven't started selling anything yet. And seed is when you want to start, going to market. You want to start selling items. So I'm at the pre-seed stage after 8 years. And what does that mean? It means that I have a group of companies that are ready to go to market, ready to start selling items. But I haven't started yet, right? So I'm actually raising money from investors and building a capitalization table. So a cap table is a list of investors who are backing this venture. So building a cap table for me means finding the right investors, the right quality of investors, and the right amount of investors, right amount of capital from the right number of investors to launch, right? So I'm actually building a table of institutional investors. I need about 10 investors, each putting in about a million to a million five, 1.5 million US dollars each. And I'm also going to open up the table to individual investors, people who want to invest a smaller amount of money, maybe 100,000 Guyana dollars, or you know, uh, which is 500 US dollars, up to a few thousand, say a million, 5,000, 500 to 5,000 US dollars. If you want to invest that kind of money, then you will be able to also join the cap table. So what am I talking about? I'm going to um, I'm going to put in the description below the link to the investor hub, to the group of companies that I'm building. So let me explain how it works. I'm building a group of companies, a medical group of companies, based on my area of expertise, based on my skill, right? So my area of expertise is in medical imaging, diagnostic imaging, using MRI, CT, ultrasound, um, X-ray, digital X-ray, mammography, all of the imaging technologies. And the idea is to make all of diagnostic imaging directly accessible to you, the citizens of Guyana, just as Facebook or Instagram or YouTube is accessible to you. So you should be able to go on your phone and pull up your images and see your medical reports. That is the whole point. The point is that we want to make diagnostic imaging accessible. Currently, the state of diagnostic imaging in the world is that if you get sick, you go to a doctor and you explain what is happening, where you're feeling pain and all that stuff, and the doctor will take your patient history and then try to diagnose your illness. Basically, send you for some tests, send you to lab, you get some blood tests, send you to imaging, so you get a diagnostic image, whether it be X-ray or CT or ultrasound. At that time, he will determine what kind of imaging you need. What I want to do in this group of companies, the medical group of what I'm calling the Hazel Group or the Lisa Group of companies, is I want you to be able to go to a medical center such as one I'm building, where you can simply say, I would like to have a heart scan, an image of my heart with CT or with MRI. I want a calcium score. I want to know what my current state of health is. I want a full body scan, or I want a brain scan, or I want a chest scan. I want an MRI or a CT or an ultrasound, and you'll be able to get that on demand. It doesn't have to come, you don't need to see a physician. You don't need to have some symptoms. You can simply request that, look, um, for my own mental and uh, emotional satisfaction, I just want to know if everything is all right with me. And that will allow us to provide you with diagnostic images in the healthy state, even before you get sick, of your um, body. That's the whole point of um, the medical group, right? To provide diagnostic care, health care, to people who are not sick. Now, if you are sick, we're also going to be able to help you get medical images or get diagnostic care. But the idea is that healthcare is not just for sick. If you have to wait until you get sick and you experience symptoms to uh, get healthcare, then you are starting out behind the curve, behind the ball, right? You want to be able to be on top of your medical state at all times. And that means you can't wait until you start seeing symptoms, you start getting symptoms before you access medical care. Now, for a long time, this has been inaccessible because it's expensive and because it's tedious and because the way the healthcare system works, it's frustrating to get to any kind of attention. What we are doing instead is to provide healthcare in a boutique form. So it's just like going to a fancy hotel and spending a night or two, or going to a fancy restaurant, and having a meal. That's the level of expectation and service that you should expect from this group of companies. Now I'm going to put a link in the description below to what I'm talking about, the Lisa group of companies. What are the companies in the group? Like I said, I started out teaching at the University of Guyana. So one of those companies is a medical university. It's called the Georgetown Biomedical University. I still have to get permission to use that name, but it's going to be called the Nova Biomedical University until we can get permission to call it Georgetown Biomedical University. That's one of the first members of the group to be able to teach medicine to everybody who wants to learn. In other words, you no longer have to um, jump through these extensive hoops to get access to medical care, to medical knowledge. You should be able to go online and learn or join us in some of our labs if you want to, pursue a career in healthcare. You want to work in a lab, or you want to become a medical diagnostic imaging specialist. You want to be an MRI technologist, a CT technologist, ultrasound technologist. You should be able to simply join our university and get that knowledge. We want to get it to the point where it's free. I mean, that's a long term goal. Long term goal is that you want to be able to learn this stuff for free, especially now since the University of Guyana is going to be free and the government is going to pay for students to get access to that institution. We're going to work out the same deal with the government so that you can get reimbursed for the courses you take with us, right? So if you want to learn, if you want to become a nurse or a physician, or you want to become a technologist, or you want to become a pharmacist, or you want to become a respiratory technologist, all of that you'll be able to do and have your tuition reimbursed and covered by the government of Guyana. So we want to work out deals so that you get scholarships and you can get, in the long term, you can get access to this information, this knowledge for free, right? So that's the Georgetown Biomedical University, or Nova Biomedical University. The second member of the group is the LBS Imaging Services. This is the LBS Imaging Center, where we're actually stacking a building with dozens and dozens of diagnostic imaging equipment, and we will make that imaging equipment accessible to hospitals. So if you're at a hospital and they recommend that you get an MRI, but the hospital doesn't have an MRI facility, then they can refer you to us and you can get your diagnostic imaging done. Or you could simply walk up and say, I would like to get a full body scan, MRI scan of my body. We can do that for you. You don't have to be ill, you just have to want this information. We'll provide it for you so that you can even access that information on your digital device, your cell phone or your computer at home or something like that. So LBS Imaging Services is the second member of the medical group. The third member of the medical group is a lab company. Basically, we want to be able to give you DNA tests as well. So you can get your genetic testing for some illnesses that might have some genetic origin. If you want to know if you're likely to get a certain illness, or if you have some genetic markers for some illness in the future, it might happen, when you're older. You want to be able to know that in advance and know how to adjust your lifestyle to reduce your chances of becoming ill. So, for example, a lot of women get tested for the BRCA mutation in a gene that is linked to breast cancer. But nobody in Guyana I know of is actually being tested for the BRCA mutation. We want to provide you with access to a laboratory facility that lets you get tested for various genetic mutations and certain genetic markers that may be linked to cancer. So this is a lab, basically, that allows you to get tested for all of these genetic conditions. So that's LBS, or Lisa Biosciences. And then the fourth company in the medical group is a pharmaceutical company. It's called Les Pharma. And the reason why that company becomes important is because what has happened over the years is medical imaging and lab testing, although they have improved, what hasn't really taken off is personalized treatment, personalized medical care in terms of drugs and pharmaceuticals. So what we want to do is to develop pharmaceutical agents that are specific to you individually, and to use some of the well-known, what are called traditional knowledge. People who have used traditional medicine, bush medicines in the past, know that you can actually um, manage symptoms and even uh, reduce the effects of some diseases using plant extracts, bush medicines, right? So we want to set up a pharmaceutical company to simply extract the active ingredients in some of these bush medicines and local medicines, and to test them for efficacy. In other words, put them through some rigorous analysis to determine if, in fact, and how, in fact, they work. Some examples. For example, I think people use in Guyana various teas, like noni and tisam and sweet broom and soursop leaves. So lots of traditional medicine and a knowledge of traditional medicine is embedded in the culture. We want to make that accessible to people through a well researched and regulated and tested pharmacopoeia. In other words, we want to provide tablets and well researched dosage for some of these medicines. So, for example, you might be taking a certain tea for an illness, but you don't know what dose is effective. That has to be studied rigorously, carefully, and then once it's determined that it's efficacious, that has to be the active ingredient has to be isolated and packaged at the right dose. So all of this can be done locally in Guyana with our knowledge of um, traditional medicine and bush medicines, and we've set up a company to do that. So that is what is happening with the medical group of companies. There are four of them. There's going to be a fifth one, a hospital that hasn't been started yet. But what we're doing right now is raising pre-seed capital to launch these companies. And I'm going to put, like I said, in the description below, you can go to a link that will give you access to the websites, access to the Investor Hub. So the Investor Hub is basically a place where you'll be able to choose a company to invest in or invest in the group of companies. You'll be able to track the progress with each of these companies, and you'll be able to see how they're performing, what the recent um, earnings reports are. You'll be able to see the reports, you'll be able to see the performance of each company, the revenue and expenditure and so on. So I want to make that information available to people who are investors who have invested, and so I've set up the Investor Hub. So I'll put all this in the description below, so that you'll be able to, if you are interested in this sort of thing, you'll be able to access that information. So that is what's happening here, guys. That's where I have been. Now, like I said, this stuff actually doesn't happen overnight. It took me 8 years to get to this point, and it'll probably take another 5 years before it's um, fully established and operational. But the long-term goal is to make this kind of uh, company a global a part of the global medical system, so that you will be able to access this information from anywhere in the world, whether you're in Canada or in the US. In other words, you'll be able to access these services anywhere in the world. We'll probably have um, outlets or um, operations in each of the major centers in the world, like Canada, Toronto, like in the US, in the major cities. So the goal is to build a global network of companies, including cities in Africa and cities in North America, in Europe, right? So this is a global a global push to change the way we access medicine and to make it accessible to everybody, regardless of wealth status or where you are in the world. In other words, you should not have to live in a developed country to get good medicine. Good medicine is a right and it should be available and accessible to everybody everywhere in the world. So that's what's happening, guys. That's what's happening with the LISA group and the medical group, medical part of the LISA group. Now there are 21 companies in the group. You can go look at the websites or the hub, the investor hub, to see the other companies. There are several sectors, right? There are several sectors of the economy that we're going to be building companies in. Some of these companies are already, we're working on them. They're already defined, and there are websites for them. There's, for example, an airline company, which I've mentioned in the past, Les Air. That's almost ready for operations. But the idea is to build companies that provide the services that are absolutely needed in the modern society. Guyana is growing, it's one of the fastest growing countries in the world, but people are reluctant to come back to Guyana because if you need good health care, we have not been the kind of place that provides you with, the kind of health care that you get, let's say, at the Mayo Clinic or at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York. Or so what the goal of this is to make coming back to Guyana, if you want to choose to live in Guyana, we want to make it so that you don't have to give up quality of healthcare, quality of services like travel, right? We want you to get to have the same quality of food, the same quality of healthcare, the same quality of services, just as you would experience or you expect to have in North America or in Europe, right? So the good start is that these hotels, for example, the Marriott and the Pegasus Suites and all the various hotels that I've been covering in this on this channel, are bringing the level of hospitality to the same level as you would expect in other countries, in other destinations around the world. So eventually, you should be able to go to a Hyatt hotel or a Marriott hotel or a Hilton hotel in Guyana and experience the same kind of care, the same kind of hospitality that you'd experience at these hotels, whether they be in Asia or in North America. So we're trying to get that aspect of the economy, that sector of the economy, up to international standards. But we're not doing the same for other sectors like travel and transportation, like airlines travel, like healthcare, whether it be access or quality of care. We need to get our healthcare up to the same quality and standard as it is in the developed world. So that is the motivation and the push behind building these companies. And we're doing it in every sector that we have access to, right? People said to me, why don't you focus on one company? Why don't you focus on building one company? And to that, my response has always been, there's no guarantee that you will succeed building one company at a time. So you are as likely to succeed building 20 companies as you are at building one company. So what you do is you find what is common among all these companies and you build that basic infrastructure, right? So for example, what is common behind all of these medical companies is digital medical records. You need to be able to access patient information digitally on your devices from anywhere in the world, and that will be a core technology that each one of these 4 or 5 companies in the medical group requires. So rather than build one company, I build the core technology, the digital medical record system, and then I roll that out for the university system, because if you want to register for courses, it's the same as a medical record system, right? The same idea. If you want to access your medical data, whether it be images or medical reports or laboratory tests results, they're all stored in a database that's built on a medical record system. The same is true for a lab test. The same is true for like the DNA tests. For the same is true for a pharmaceutical company. whether it be um, what drugs you're using, what drugs are accessible to you, and what your history of medications are. So all that is based on a database system which can be built for one company as it can be built for all the group of companies. So that is the idea behind building several companies at once instead of, say, trying to build one company at a time, right? So for those of you who are interested in the details of what we're doing, you could simply sign up at the Investor Hub. We're going to make that available, get that website up and running in another day, in another few days. The link is in the description. But that is what we're doing here in Guyana. If you want to see more content like this, you want more information in this area, you can follow it on the business channel. I'm going to be posting this video on both channels, the business channel and here on the main channel. And you'll be able to follow the progress we're making on these companies in future by simply signing up at the Investor Hub or by subscribing to the business channel. But that's what's happening here, guys. It's Tuesday morning, Tuesday 21st of October. We're coming off a holiday weekend here in Guyana, but some of you might be celebrating Diwali today. For those of you who are still celebrating, happy Diwali, and enjoy the rest of the week. Later! Oh, by the way, share this video with friends and family around the world. Let people know what's happening in the fastest growing country in the world, Guyana. Later!